What's good, people? It's your man DL Saint. Happy Monday to y'all. Good morning. It's pretty much morning everywhere in America right now. Um, Late morning on the East Coast, early morning on the West. I hope all is well. Um, Things are pretty cool on my end. Um, I'm up doing some things, and I was reading some headlines, kind of checking out what's going on in the world, and I saw a headline, and I think it was CNN reporting that China is helping Russia during this war with Ukraine by sending, looks like they were saying missiles or some sort of military support to Russia. That's not good, people. That's not good at all. And I decided I'll jump on real quick and I'm gonna keep this one short and talk about my take on what's going on in Ukraine. Um, and it's really, you guys know what I'm doing. I am pulling up my own stream so I can be a part of it. And there it is. And I am on there. We turn down my volume and we like it. Bam. All right. Now I'm back to my laugh chat. So, what's going on in Ukraine? Well, um, it's done a lot of things. I mean, first of all, Russia has definitely hurt its standing in the world as far as being a feared military or a feared nation. Um, if I believe that the Russian military was, top five, if not top three, on the planet. I thought that their forces were well trained, and I thought that they were fierce, and thought that you would think twice about, messing with the Russian military. Now, I understand they had Afghanistan, we had Vietnam, but it is what it is. They went in, they helped decide, kind of shut that down. We've gone in and did what we've done in the Middle East. So it was us, it was China, it was Russia, were the quasi superpowers. I think we're still technically a superpower, Russia and China. I'm not sure because it has a lot to do with economics, and I haven't done any research on that. But I was looking, and when the word came that Russia was going to make this move, like I knew about Crimea and I knew about the civil war that's going on, and I guess that's the southeast portion of Ukraine along the Russian border, and the Russians were backing the separatists. I know it's been going on for a while. So when the Russians were massing their forces on the border, I really didn't think they were going to invade, and they did. Once they invaded, I thought, 72 hours max, this will be over. So I was wrong, along with a whole bunch of other talking heads out there uh, who overestimated Russian capability, and now Russia has exposed itself to the world, and they have their hands full with Ukraine. Now, yeah, granted, Ukraine is getting a lot of support from NATO backed countries, and they're getting a lot of support from the U.S. monetarily and as far as weapons, but not necessarily with soldiers. I mean, you hear the stories about people going over, guys volunteering to go fight, guys from the UK, guys from from America. Um, but it's not as if they're sending legions and legions of men over there. The Ukrainians are standing on their own. They have rallied, and they are, pushing the Russians back, and they are beating the Russians on a lot of different fronts. Like Mariupol and all that, there's a lot going on there, but Kiev never failed, and most of the other Russian objectives didn't fall, and Russia has lost a lot of ground. It looks like they're regrouping and trying to figure out what they're going to do next, and hence China coming stepping in with, it looks like, some support for them. But I mean, Russia has plenty of equipment, plenty of men. So why isn't this working? Well, I mean, I think it's real simple. Um, Putin and his generals have never read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I think it's as simple as that. I think that's one of the big factors. And the reason I bring that up is Sun Tzu made it clear, right? Sun Tzu said, "Know the enemy, know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be in peril. Know your enemy, know yourself. 100 battles, you'll never be in peril. 100 battles, you'll never lose." And that makes sense. You know what you're capable of, and you know what your enemy is capable of. You can structure your plan of attack, execute, and be successful every single time. Point blank, period, is a very, very simple, very, very easy concept. This has been around for thousands of years. So this was Sun Tzu. They didn't do it. When you are ignorant of the enemy, but know yourself, your chances of winning or losing are equal. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. If you know yourself, but you don't know your enemy, it's a coin toss. You might win, you might lose. That kind of makes sense, you know what I mean, when you lock it in. If you're ignorant of both your enemy and of yourself, you are certain in every battle to be in peril. You are certain in every battle to be in peril, which loosely translates, you're going to lose every single time. If you win, it is pure luck. So keep that in mind. If you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you got a problem. And this deceptively easy or simple instruction, properly applied, is at the essence of both of making a sound decision to go to war and of strategic and tactical planning once the decision has been made. Clausewitz, which is the art of warfare, is kind of like the Eastern doctrine on war. Clausewitz is more of the Western doctrine of warfare, and he was around in the 17th, 18th century, I believe. I do have his book. It's a very, very thick technical manual. I want to say it was around about the time of the Napoleonic Wars, I believe. I haven't really gotten through it yet. It's a good one. I'm still working on it. And of course, I didn't study this in college. I didn't study this in war school or anything like that, like war college or whatever. And this wasn't standard reading in the United States Army as a junior enlisted guy. But this is sort of the things that I'm into. So, and Clausewitz further developed this instruction, right? So he really got into it, and he got into the financial parts about it. He got into the political parts of it as well. But I always go back to Sun Tzu: know yourself, know your enemy. So what did Putin do? Putin rushed in, not really understanding his capability and the capability of his armies, and he certainly underestimated the capabilities and the will of the Ukrainian people. He came in thinking, I'm just going to roll in with my armor, I'm going to roll in with my guys, and they're just going to fold, and we're just going to take over. We're going to put our government in place, and everything's going to be everything. And I understand why Putin would want to take Ukraine, not just for the natural resources, but he's also trying to, in his eyes, protect himself from a growing Western alliance, NATO. And he has those issues, and he is fully aware of Ukraine's desire to be a part of that organization. And he might have kind of hurt himself in that as well, because now they really want to be a part, or at least have the protections of their neighbors who are NATO. So he didn't know himself. He didn't know his army. There's also problems with the way that the Russians do business. Granted, they're no longer the Soviet Union, but they still kind of work under that sort of cloud, and everyone's suspicious of everyone else, and no one's going to tell you the truth, and everyone's on a take. There's a lot of greed. I mean, there's a lot of greed in America. There's a lot of greed within the capitalist system, but there's a ton of greed within their system, what they're doing right now. So you have your people in place, and you have your cronies that you've put in these positions of power, and you were asking for your reports on what's our readiness like, what is this like, what is that like, and everything is great. Yeah, boss, everything's a-okay. So that, $800 million you sent us for upgrades to our equipment, yeah, I put that in my pocket, but I'm not going to tell you, right? That $1 billion that was sent out to the Navy for repairs and new equipment, yeah. That money went into my pocket, and I'm not going to tell you. These people had no idea that their boss was going to invade some country someday. So when the orders came down, they roll out, and we see tanks on the side of the road because their tracks are flawed, their maintenance is horrible. Vehicles are pulled over because their wheels have dry rotted, and they don't have the proper equipment to change the tires or even have spare tires that will help them out. So they have to leave the vehicles there. They're running out of fuel. They have guys in the field that don't necessarily have the proper equipment they need to go out and fight. And it's cold. It's bitterly cold. So you have to deal with the elements. There's not proper food. There's not proper medicine. You got all these things that the boss, Putin, thought that they were securing. We got this. We're going to go roll in here. 72 hours later, we're going to take it. That wasn't the case. And he believed in his specialized soldiers, his air assault soldiers, right? The airborne elements, his Spetsnaz soldiers, like their best Russian special forces guys. He figured these guys could take care of anything. And I mean, I can get where he's coming from. Imagine if America decided to invade Canada and we sent the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, we sent MARSOC Marines, Rangers, and they all got their teeth kicked in and they all came running back home. We would know we got a problem because those are our best soldiers. There are a lot of talk out there that Russia just sent these conscripts and they sent their bottom tier soldiers. Nah, they sent their best. And there are reports out there with some of these air assault elements that were getting wiped out, some of the airborne elements that were getting wiped out. You got, reports on the ground of the Spetsnaz guys losing their commanders in the field, being shot by snipers, falling victim to artillery and mortar and rocket attacks. So leadership is being wiped out. And these top tier soldiers go into battle believing they're top tier, and they're getting their butts handed to them. So that's bad. And again, that's on Putin, not knowing himself. He did not know his army. And on the Ukrainian side, they're fighting for their home. They're fighting for their way of life. They're fighting for their freedom. So you have people who are gathering up their families, getting them to safety, saying goodbye to their wife and their kids, grabbing their weapons and going to fight. And we're talking about the IT guy. We're talking about the baker, right? We're talking about the candlestick maker. We're not talking about the professional soldiers. We're talking about just men. And it kind of reminds me of American history with the Minuteman. These guys, Paul Revere, we've all heard that, arms to arms, the redcoats are coming, that sort of thing. And guys just wake up, grab their musket, grab their powder, grab their shots, their bullets, go meet up in the town square, form up, and then fight the Rush. At that time, the British Army, which was the most fearsome military force that the world had ever seen at that point. These guys went out and fought, and they lost a lot of battles, but eventually they won the war, and now we're Americans. So you have a determined people. There's also women who are like, you know what? I'm not even going to go with the kids. I'm going to go back and help this war effort, and they're grabbing their weapons, or they're going to do what they can to help make Molotov cocktails, run ammo, go out there and help in the field as medic, corpsman type things. So you have an entire nation united against a common foe. And now all you need to do is watch what's going on. They're out there getting something. So know yourself, know your enemy. And then history repeats itself. This is something that America is familiar with. And let's see, there's another thing I want to pull up for you guys to check out, and you can look it up. So the first one that I was reading from the Sun Tzu stuff, that came from the National War College, Washington, D.C. I found that online, and it's like apps.dc.edu. DTIC.mil if you want to go check it out. I mean, this is something that, our military studies this. I mean, there are regular scholars and then there are war scholars. And this is one of the things that we study, and this is why our military is so effective, because it's not just we're just the big dumb guy with a big bat. There's very, very, very smart men and women within our military getting the job done, right? We got our share of cronies. We got our share of political puppets. Yeah, we got that too. But where the rubber meets the road, when it's time to get down, it's time to get in the trenches. We got very, very smart people. We got true leaders out there to make it happen. That's why it's really hard to defeat the United States in battle. So let's talk about historically, what's gone on. And here's something here. And when I was in the United States Army from 1990 to 1994, active, and I did some time in the reserve, which, no offense to reservists, the weekend warriors, but that doesn't count to me. No offense, guys, but I was airborne every day. I can't understand the weekend warrior concept. But anyway, on your screen here is about Task Force Smith. And Task Force Smith was a task force which was the 1st Battalion, 21st Infantry Regiment. They were out of Japan, and they received orders to go to Korea to stop the North Koreans when they decided to invade South Korea. And the thing with Task Force Smith is when I talked about cronyism and stuff like that, when I was talking about what was going on in Ukraine with Russia and their seemingly readiness that they reported up to get to Putin, same thing kind of happened with America post-World War II, leading into the conflict in Korea with Task Force Smith. So when the leaders of America, like the Pentagon and the people who were in charge of forces in the East, and that would be General MacArthur, when they saw this aggression from the North Koreans into the South, and the North Koreans were rolling over the South Koreans, it wasn't even close in the beginning. Now the South Koreans are a formidable fighting force. I would not mess with South Korea if I were anybody on the planet. North Korea knows this. China knows this. Leave South Korea alone. They will hurt you. Rock soldiers are not to be effed with. You dig? They will hurt you. They know how to fight. Those are tough, tough men. Shout out to Rock Forces. Shout out to the Katusas out there who getting some. Because my godson is in Korea right now, and he's close to the DMZ. And if you're listening, JD, listen to your Katusa. They know what they're doing. At least the infantry Katusas. The aviation Katusas, they're a little soft. I ain't gonna lie. The guys we had in our unit when we were in South Korea, they were a little, mama and daddy's boys. But the Rock soldiers and the Katusas who were supporting and augmenting the infantry forces that were there, those guys up there in Camp Red Cloud CRC, they had that big Indian on their shoulder. Those Katusas were not to be trifled with. So shout out to y'all. But back to Task Force Smith. 1st Battalion, 21st Infantry Regiment. They had received the highest scores of any unit in Japan on its battalion tactical test in March of 1950. So what does that mean? Every year, at least once a year, every unit in the United States Army, and I'm pretty sure the other branches do the same thing, they have to go through readiness testing. When all of the big wigs come down and there's certain tasks you have to be able to complete, and there are requirements. There's certain things that you have to be able to do in a certain amount of time. One of the requirements might be you have to get from your base, from wherever you live, you have to, in X amount of time, from the time you're notified, you have X amount of hours to get all of your gear, to load up all of your vehicles and be mobilized on the road en route to a target destination. That's one of the tasks. And then once you get there, you have so much time to offload your equipment, set everything up, get everything going, whatever your unit is. I don't care if you're an MP, military police unit, air traffic control unit like we were, medical unit. I don't care, whatever your job is, when it's time to take your job out of the office and put it in the field being out there in the woods, that's the test. It's a readiness test. And there are times, and you have to be able to do it. You have to have so many soldiers that are ready. I mean, it's so many different things. And then once you get there, you have to provide security. They give you these different scenarios to make sure that your soldiers are proficient with their weapons, be it their sidearms, their rifle, any squad or platoon size weapons like saws or whatever, machine guns, mortar, infantry, whatever you've got, mortar, all that kind of stuff. Jason Johnson, what's good, brother? I see you. I'm glad you can make the live. Man, I just decided to jump on and talk about this. So, Task Force Smith had the highest marks of any unit in Japan. Well, how is that possible? Right? Because they took the test. It was a readiness test, and all the guys came down, and all the unit went out there, and they set up all their stuff, and they did all their things, and they were ready. 100% readiness. Grade A, stamped. Y'all got it going on. Who? Now, probably what happened is that the people in command knew the test was coming, and they basically cheated. They cut corners. Their buddies were probably the judges. Hey, man, you're going to judge my readiness test, so make sure you give me a high mark. So when I come and judge your readiness test, I'll do the same. So it's just kind of like one hand washes the other. And this is probably what they were doing because, again, this was after World War II. You got to understand we were bringing down our readiness to an extent. The war was over. We had fought off, the Japanese threat. We had fought off the German threat and the Italian threat. We defeated the Axis forces. Everyone's coming home. We got the whole baby boom thing. People aren't necessarily thinking about the military because there's no one else to fight. There are no threats out there. So the people who were stuck in the military were just waiting until their enlistment's up or waiting until their 2 years is up. I think it was 2 or 3 years, whatever. No, back then when you got drafted, you were in it till the end of the war. So once the war was over, however long they had to do until they get to go back home again, they were like, man, we just here. And it's just keep our uniforms pressed, keep our boots shiny. And let's just do our time and get back home because we're over here in Japan having a good old time. It's not like you got to fight anybody, and they're just chilling, right? So they get orders to go to Korea to stop the North Korean aggression into South Korea based on the information that these generals had. This is the best unit. We got a problem. Send 1st Battalion, 21st Infantry Regiment. Look at their scores. These guys are hooah. Let's get them over there. The truth of the matter was, when those orders came down, that unit just gathered up as many men as they could find. Cooks, truck drivers, clerical people, and they just like, you guys are coming with us. You guys are now in 1st Battalion, 21st Infantry. That's your company. We'll get you a company commander as soon as we can. Listen to the senior ranking person, whoever's there, just listening to them. Grab your gear and get on that ship. And that's what happened. So Task Force Smith became a group of guys who didn't even know how to fire their weapon. Couldn't even fire their rifle. They couldn't load it. They didn't know what to do with these 30 caliber machine guns. They didn't know what to do with the BAR. They didn't know how to work their Thompson. And for anyone who's never messed with a Thompson submachine gun, it ain't easy loading that thing, getting that magazine in and out. And the drums, forget about it. You really need a lot of practice on that. These guys didn't know how to use their garants. And when you load one of those things, it will hurt your fingers. You don't get your finger out of there fast enough. Anybody knows weapons and know what I'm talking about. These men were sent to Korea to fight an army that is decimating the South Korean army. And their job was to hold them until we can get our regular troops mobilized and in country, right? Hold them until we can get the Marines in wherever the ships are, wherever the 7th Fleet is, or whoever was over there. Hold until we can get these people over here. Hold until we can get the some proper air support over here until we can figure this out. And it was a good call, right? because their scores were so high. So they send these guys over, Task Force Smith. These guys didn't know what they were doing. And let's just say the results were not acceptable for the United States military, especially coming off this big high of destroying, the evil Nazi regime, defeating the German army was no small task. Germany, the weapons the Germans developed in World War II are still good weapons today. The Panther Faust is still being used today. It's been used in Ukraine, the newer versions of it. You get a hold of that German MG, that machine gun still works really well. And that barrel is so easy to change out. I mean, the Germans had that back then. Look at the way the German helmet was designed in World War II. That's the way our helmets are designed now. We beat them. So to think that we're going to get crushed by a ragtag band of guys out of North Korea, which what happened, they came down, and this was before the Chinese joined in. North Koreans came down, they were handling business. So Task Force Smith went, and if you want to know more about Task Force Smith, Google it. I mean, it's a very interesting story. But the readiness part stuck with the United States Army in particular, all the way into the 1990s when I enlisted into the United States Army and I became a soldier. They drilled that into our head. No more Task Force Smith. And the Army preaches that to this day. Every soldier in the United States Army is proficient with their weapon to the point where they get sent somewhere tomorrow, they can at least use, they know how to use their weapon. They know how to use their equipment. No more pencil whipping these tests. You know what I mean? They go out, these readiness tests. They don't play that no more. They don't play that no more because that was embarrassing. It was a smack in the face. It was a black eye. It was embarrassing. Now, we all know how the Korean conflict turned out. North Koreans did push all the way down. MacArthur did make it over there. And the Marines showed up. Army infantry, the real Army guys showed up. And they pushed the North Koreans all the way back up to the 38th parallel, all the way up to the Yalu River, I believe it was. And they crossed the 38th parallel, and China got involved, and then it became a whole nother thing, which is a whole nother episode. One day we might sit down and talk about what happened in Korea. But the fact is, America wasn't ready. Back to Russia. Russia wasn't ready. Russia went into Ukraine. They weren't ready, and they're getting their teeth kicked in right now. And it all circles back to Sun Tzu. Know yourself, know your enemy. That's just the bottom line. Putin failed in that. His generals failed in that. And now we're dealing with this situation. And I don't know where this is going to end. I do know that with every day that passes, the Ukrainian army and the armed forces gain more confidence. Their leadership is solid, and their resolve is unshakable. Russia has a problem. If I were Putin, I would be coming up with an exit strategy. I would be trying to figure out how I could get out of Ukraine, and I would leave it alone. Because if he doesn't, I believe he's going to have a problem within his own borders. There are a lot of Russians that are not happy with what's going on in Ukraine. There are a lot of Russians who are not accepting this. We're liberating the Ukrainians from Nazism. A lot of Russians ain't buying that, right? There are a lot of Russians who do, but there are enough Russians that don't want this. There are a lot of grieving family members getting messages from their husbands and from their brothers and their cousins who are fighting, and they're saying this is ridiculous. We don't know why we're here. You know, these Ukrainians ain't playing. We lost this many men today. You know, we think we're going to lose this many tomorrow. We lost this many tanks. We lost this many aircraft. So these guys don't want to be there. And the information is seeping out little by little. Nippers, was good. I see you. Thanks for popping in. Lots of lies lost due to unprecedented. Yeah, unpreparedness. Absolutely. Absolutely. This sort of thing happens. Putin believed that his army was ready and more than capable of handling this operation because he was lied to. And he wanted to believe that. Now he's in it. He's stuck. He doesn't know what to do. All these threats of chemical weapons and all these threats of nuclear weapons and all this kind of stuff is desperation. He doesn't know what to do. He's not going to use nuclear weapons for sure. It's over if he does. He knows that. You just can't win. Low yield nuclear tactical nukes in that environment. That's not a good thing, especially with all those nuclear power plants scattered throughout that region. It does not make sense. I don't see him doing that. And one of the things that I'm surprised I haven't seen yet is more attacks in Russia. I'm surprised I haven't seen, there hasn't been an uprising, and I'm pretty sure it's coming because the Russians have their hands full fighting the Ukrainians on their ground. I don't think they're watching their borders. So just like the Russians are trying to get saboteurs inside of Ukraine, I think Ukrainians are sending their people into Russia. And all they need to do is link up with those Russians who are upset with Putin, who don't like Putin, who are tired of him doing what he's doing. You know, he's a tyrant. They're sick of it. They can't vote him out, right? The whole system is rigged. They know that. It's just a matter of time before they pick up weapons and do something about it. And this could be that spark. And I wonder what that would look like, a Russian revolution of sorts, the second Russian revolution. That would be insane. And they will have constant supplies coming from Ukraine and the rest of the Western world into Russia to feed those dissidents who want to stand up against Putin, and they'll call them freedom fighters or whatever we're going to call them. But again, this thing could get uglier and uglier. So that's my little 2 cents on it. Putin has exposed his military. He has exposed his nation to the rest of the world with sanctions and all this. The sanctions are working. They are slowly strangling the Russian economy. There was a headline that I didn't read today, but I'm going to read later about how Russia is defaulting on some of its national debt obligations to the rest of the world. China is only going to help so much. China doesn't want to get involved too deep. I believe when Putin did this, I think part of his calculation was that China would make a move on Taiwan. China didn't. So that is just more focus, more pressure on Russia. And he made a bad call. If I were Putin, Vladimir, man, get them boys out of there. There's no need to kill anyone else over this. You lost. Right? Take a step back, regroup, fix what's going on in Russia, try to save some face, right? Get the Russian people on your side and help them out. Do that. But if you continue to press this war, this invasion, I just don't see you winning, brother. I just don't see it. The Ukrainians are doing a lot of damage to the Russians, and they don't even have their Air Force yet. As soon as they figure out how to get those MiGs into the hands of those Ukrainian pilots who are chomping at the bit, it's on. We've already seen some of these Ukrainian pilots in Russian helicopters attack Russian soil. That's only going to continue, especially along the border. And who's to say that the Ukrainians won't push a little further to get themselves their own little DMZ, demilitarized zone, to buy them some extra space, little cushion between Russia and themselves. And who's to say they won't take Crimea back? So think about that. They haven't got the air assets that they need with respect to some of these jets. And they haven't beefed up their naval forces yet, which could probably also happen. I haven't read or heard anything about that, but I wouldn't be surprised. So we'll see how this plays out. I just had that on my mind. People wanted to throw that out there. Let me know in the comments below what y'all think. Do you think that Russia and Putin are going to be able to regroup, push back into Ukraine and hit those objectives and basically take the country? Or do you think it's all over for Russia and they need to pull out and try to figure out a way to save face and get in the good graces of the rest of the world, so get these sanctions removed and get people buying their oil again and all that? Let me know in the comments below. Yo, I'm DL Saint, man. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good week. Peace.